Well, discipleship isn't limited to fancy programs. In fact, some of the best discipleship happens in the everyday, ordinary moments of life. Hey, I'm Pastor Matt here with your Missionary Pathway Mission Insight. And if you find these insights helpful, take an opportunity, click like and subscribe on the channel and share this out with somebody else that you think would benefit from it. And then also, if you want to be a part of supporting more insights like this, simply go to thekairosnetwork.com/give. thekairosnetwork.com/give. You can be a part of supporting mission insights and other great resources like this. And so this thought comes out of the reality that one, I've struggled to sometimes make discipleship way more complicated. In fact, I remember when we were at our church plant, and I remember the moment I was in this discipleship training, and I just remember sitting down and realizing, oh man, I have made this way too complicated. Discipleship doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, some of the best discipleship happens in those everyday moments of life. And sometimes we think that discipleship has to be limited to official church programs or worship services, Bible study classes, but the reality is some of the best discipling conversations I've had have happened in ordinary spaces. Spaces like places with my friends, coffee shops, breweries, and some of my favorite lately have come around the kitchen table with my boys. It's amazing to me, some of the best conversations we've had about discipleship and following Jesus and learning what it looks like to live out the faith, even wrestling through some of our own struggles and doubts. They've happened around the dining room table or in the car when we're driving somewhere. And it's just a reminder to me that sometimes the best discipleship doesn't need to be limited to a fancy program or led by a professional leader. Some of the best discipleship you can have happens in the places and spaces that you're already going, around the people that God's already surrounded you with. So as you think about that, here are just a few simple ideas to key in on. Number one, discipleship as a lifestyle. I think it's really important to realize that discipleship happens in casual relational moments, and so not just in structured programs. And so as you're thinking about that, you need to kind of prepare yourself to be ready to have those conversations in those casual, ordinary, everyday moments. And when you begin to see discipleship less as a program and more as a lifestyle, it can open you up to be ready for those conversations in those everyday spaces, learning how and when to have those conversations and when not to. And if you're kind of wondering when that should be, check out one of our earlier mission insights called the stoplight principle. Stoplight principle is an incredible principle that can teach you when to have a spiritual conversation and when not to have a spiritual conversation. In fact, we'll link it in the description below. Next, focus on presence. I think sometimes just being present is all you need. Be present and available for people in the midst of their struggles, in the midst of their joys. Sometimes the best discipleship begins by you just being a good friend. And by being present around people, that really helps you build a space for relational discipleship. Next, remember that everyone's a disciple maker. I think it's really easy to look at somebody like me, a pastor, and say, oh, well, of course you're a disciple maker. You're a pastor. But the reality is Jesus didn't say in his gospels, hey, disciple making is limited to pastors. No, Jesus opened disciple making to everybody, all his followers. All his followers are able to share the gospel, and all his followers are able to be disciple makers. Sure, you might not be leading a church or in professional ministry, but you're actually a disciple maker. And sometimes you're a disciple maker positioned to disciple people better than a pastor like myself ever could. So realize from the get-go, not only can you do discipleship in ordinary spaces, but you are called to be a disciple maker, to help people learn how to follow the way of Jesus. And then finally, intentionality matters. I think whether it's conversations over coffee or shared hobby, take intentional steps to bring people into those everyday conversations, interactions with Jesus. Sometimes you can be in these highly relational, ordinary spaces, but realize that you need to be intentional with that. And so if you start to step into a discipling relationship, maybe you decide, hey, we want to read through the Bible together. Well, be intentional about reading the Bible. Set up a time to do that together. Have a usual place that you meet at. You know, an important part of relational disciple making in those everyday spaces is being intentional. For us and our family, it's as simple as trying to do some devotion times with the kids around some of our meals. That's a way for us to be relational and to connect with them in conversation around who God is, who Jesus is, and what it looks like really nuts and bolts practically to follow Jesus in our everyday, ordinary lives. And so those are just some thoughts. Hey, if you want to learn how to be a disciple maker, there's actually a lot of great resources we have here at the Kairos Network. So I'd encourage you, check out Missionary Pathway. In the Missionary Pathway, you'll learn how you can do discipleship in those everyday spaces. And stick around, follow what we're doing throughout the course of this year, because you're going to find that we're releasing more trainings and resources to help you learn how to be a disciple maker in the places you're already going. So with that, thanks a bunch for taking an opportunity to be here. Hey, if it was a help to you, like I said, click like, subscribe, share it out with somebody else. And if you want to, take an opportunity to support this and other great resources like this through supporting the Kairos Network at thekairosnetwork.com/give.